Dr. Emily Ross stood at the observation window of New Eden's main research facility, her eyes fixed on the purple-tinted sky above. The 3 moons of this alien world cast a soft glow over the bioluminescent forest that stretched for miles in every direction. After 5 years of studying this paradise, she knew every tree, every creature, and every pattern of life that made this world special. She didn't notice anything wrong at first. The small dots of light in the sky looked like normal traffic from merchant ships that regularly visited New Eden. But when her assistant, Mark, burst into the lab with a face as white as paper, she knew something had changed. "They're attacking Earth," he said, his voice shaking. "The Galactic Council. They just declared humanity a threat to galactic peace. Their fleet is moving in right now." Emily's hands gripped the window rail tighter. The Galactic Council. 12 ancient alien races who thought they knew what was best for everyone. They had welcomed humanity into their space, allowed them to build colonies, and shared some of their technology. But they had always looked down on humans, treated them like children who needed guidance. The emergency broadcast system crackled to life. Screens all around the facility lit up with the same message. "Earth under ATTCK. Initiating PR of Toxicol Omij. All colonial citizens proceed to design ATD to shield tears." Through her window, Emily watched as the dots in the sky grew larger. Council peacekeeping ships, massive things that looked like silver leaves falling through space, descended into New Eden's atmosphere. They had probably come to secure the colony, to make sure humans here didn't cause any trouble while their homeworld was being pacified. "They think we're savages," Emily said, turning to Mark. "They've spent the last 50 years studying us, watching us build these colonies, and they still don't understand." The ground shook as the first council ship landed near the research facility. Emily could see alien peacekeepers emerging. Tall, elegant beings with their advanced armor and energy weapons. They moved with the confidence of those who had never faced real resistance. Her computer beeped with an encrypted message from Earth. As the head researcher on New Eden, she was one of the few with clearance to receive direct communications from the homeland. The message was simple. "Mercury protocol activated. Shield your eyes." Emily knew what that meant. She had been briefed about it when she took this position, but like everyone else, she had hoped it would never be necessary. She pulled down the lab's protective shutters and activated the facility's defense screens. "Mark, get everyone into the basement. Now." The council peacekeepers were almost at the facility's door when it happened. A flash of light brighter than any sun burst across the sky. Emily's instruments went crazy, detecting massive energy waves rippling through space. Through the facility's filtered cameras, she watched as Mercury, the entire planet, broke apart. Its fragments, accelerated to impossible speeds by humanity's hidden weapon, tore through the Council's invasion fleet like cosmic buckshot. In orbit above Earth, 1,000-year-old warships of the Council's mighty armada crumbled like paper in a fire. The elegant alien warriors on New Eden's surface stopped their advance, their confident postures giving way to confusion and fear as they received reports of what was happening. Emily sent a message to her alien colleagues on other worlds. "You thought we were primitive because we still used physical weapons. You thought we were savage because we prepared for war while you built paradise worlds. You were wrong. We're not primitive. We're paranoid. And we're not savage. We're survivors." The Council forces on New Eden retreated to their ships in panic, their perfect formation forgotten. As they fled back into space, Emily watched the sky turn from purple to red with the reflected light of destroyed ships burning in orbit. She thought about all the beautiful worlds she had visited, all the peaceful alien races she had worked with. "They called us dangerous," she whispered to herself. They had no idea how right they were. The first stage of humanity's counterattack was complete, but Emily knew this was just the beginning. The world breaker had been revealed, and the galaxy would never be the same. Commander Daniel Wells watched the holographic display aboard the U.S. Nemesis with cold satisfaction. The remains of Mercury spread across space like a deadly cloud, each fragment guided by hidden engines humanity had buried within the planet decades ago. The Council's first wave was in ruins, their mighty ships torn apart by chunks of planet moving at near-light speed. "Status report," he ordered, his voice steady despite the historic moment unfolding before him. "World breaker systems at 80% capacity, sir," replied Lieutenant Anna Wilson from her station. "Mercury's core is still feeding power to the weapon grid. We can maintain relativistic acceleration of the fragments for another 6 hours." The U.S. Nemesis hung in space like a dark arrow, its black hull absorbing all light. Unlike the Council's beautiful silver ships, human vessels were built ugly on purpose. Every surface was armored, every curve designed to deflect energy weapons. Beauty was for people who had never faced extinction before. "Sir, incoming transmission from the Council's Second Fleet," Anna announced. "They're demanding our surrender. They say they'll spare Earth if we power down our weapons now." Daniel almost laughed. "Send them our prepared response." On screens across thousands of ships, the Council's admirals received humanity's answer, a simple video showing the construction of the world breaker. They watched in horror as the recording revealed how humans had hollowed out Mercury over 50 years, turning an entire planet into a weapon while pretending to mine it for resources. "Multiple Council ships changing course," reported Officer Steve Brown. "They're retreating to defensive positions around their paradise worlds." Daniel nodded. The Council races had spent millennia building perfect worlds, terraforming lifeless rocks into gardens of unimaginable beauty. They had invited humanity to visit these worlds as tourists, probably expecting gratitude and awe. Instead, humanity had studied them as potential targets. "Launch the drone swarms," Daniel ordered. "Let's show them what else we've been hiding." From the Nemesis and every other human warship, clouds of small, dark objects emerged. The Council had always mocked human drone technology as primitive. They didn't know that each drone carried a tiny piece of the World Breaker's technology. "Drones achieving attack formation," Anna reported. "Council ships are attempting to jam their signals." But the drones didn't need signals. Each one contained a simple command: find the nearest Council ship and make it disappear. The Council's jamming technology was useless against machines that didn't communicate at all. Daniel watched as the first Council defensive line vanished in flashes of light. The drones had performed perfectly, creating tiny points of bent space that simply erased whatever they touched. Humanity hadn't just built one world breaker. They had built millions of tiny ones. "Message from Earth Command," Steve announced. "All colonies report successful activation of their defense grids. The Council forces are in full retreat from human space." Daniel turned to his crew, their faces lit by the glow of destroyed enemy ships. "They thought we spent the last 50 years catching up to their technology," he said. "They never realized we spent it preparing for this exact day. Every mine we dug, every colony we built, every trade deal we made. It was all to prepare for the moment they decided we were too dangerous to live." A new alert flashed on the main screen. The Council was sending another message, this time from their high command itself. The alien faces appeared on screen, their elegant features twisted with a mix of fear and disbelief. "You're insane," the High Commander said. "You've turned a planet into a weapon. You've violated every law of civilization." "No," Daniel replied calmly. "We simply remembered our history. Every time a more advanced civilization met a less advanced one on Earth, the less advanced one was eventually destroyed or enslaved. We swore that would never happen to us among the stars. You call us primitive because we prepare for war. We call ourselves survivors because we remember our past." He cut the transmission and turned to his crew. "Set course for the Paradise Worlds. It's time to show them why they should have left us alone." The U.S. Nemesis turned toward Council space, its engines glowing with dark energy. Behind it, Mercury's fragments continued their deadly dance through space, a testament to humanity's determination to survive at any cost. Lieutenant Lisa Cooper felt the ground shake as her mechanized infantry unit stomped across the perfect gardens of Elysium Prime. The Council had spent 300 years making this world into their idea of heaven. Her squad would destroy it in less than a day. "All units, form up," she ordered through her comm system. The massive war machines, each 3 stories tall, moved into position. They looked crude compared to the elegant buildings around them, all sharp angles and thick armor, built to survive rather than impress. The aliens had filled this world with delicate crystal towers that caught the light of 2 suns. Floating gardens drifted between the buildings, full of flowers that sang and trees that glowed. It was beautiful. It was about to become a warning. "Enemy forces spotted ahead," reported Private Jack Miller. "They're setting up energy barriers around the central garden." Lisa watched through her helmet's display as Council defenders rushed to protect their precious park. They had weapons that could stop starships, shields that could deflect asteroids. But they had never fought humans before. Not really. "Deploy the mud," she ordered. From the backs of the war machines, tanks opened and spilled thick, brown liquid onto the pristine white streets. The Council races had forgotten about simple things like mud and dirt in their perfect worlds. They had no idea that the mud was filled with billions of nanomachines. "They're laughing at us," Jack said, watching the alien defenders' reactions. "They think we're trying to make their city dirty." Lisa smiled inside her helmet. Let them laugh. The mud spread through the streets, seeping into the ground. Then it started to eat everything it touched. Not with acid or fire, but by taking things apart piece by piece. The beautiful crystal roads crumbled into dust. The singing flowers fell silent. The glowing trees went dark. "By all the stars," one of the Council defenders shouted in their language. "They're destroying it all." That was when Lisa's troops opened fire, not with energy weapons or plasma beams, but with simple metal bullets and shells. The Council's advanced shields were designed to stop energy attacks. They had never bothered to build defenses against primitive projectiles. "Push forward," Lisa ordered. "Remember your training." Her soldiers moved like a steel wave through the falling city. Council troops fired back with weapons that could vaporize mountains, but the human machines were built to take hits. They just kept coming, stomping through the ruins of paradise, their guns thundering. "Ma'am," Jack called out, "they're sending civilians through the corridors to the west, trying to save their artists and scholars." "Let them go," Lisa replied. "We're not here to kill their people. We're here to kill their pride." More Council ships appeared in the sky, trying to evacuate as many citizens as they could. They didn't understand that this was exactly what humanity wanted, for them to watch as their perfect world was turned to dust. The mud had spread through most of the city now. Buildings that had stood for centuries collapsed into piles of gray powder. Gardens that had taken decades to grow withered in minutes. The Council forces fell back in horror as their paradise died around them. Lisa led her troops to the central garden, the heart of Elysium Prime. It was their most precious place, where they kept examples of every beautiful thing they had created. Her soldiers formed a circle around it. "This is Lieutenant Cooper to all Council forces," she broadcast on all frequencies. "Watch carefully. This is what happens when you threaten humanity." She gave the signal, and her troops opened fire. The garden, with all its priceless treasures, was reduced to rubble in minutes. The Council members who watched from their escaping ships would never forget the sight. "Command, this is Cooper," she reported as her unit finished its work. "Elysium Prime has been neutralized. Moving to the next target." As her troops marched out of the ruined city, Lisa thought about Earth, about all the ancient ruins and dead civilizations in human history. Her people had learned long ago that paradise never lasts. Now the Council would learn that lesson too. Professor Robert Nash raced through the crowded halls of Haven Station, carrying a sealed container of alien plant seeds. Around him, other scientists from Earth rushed to save what they could before the paradise worlds fell. The neutral space station had become humanity's ark, preserving the treasures that would soon be lost forever. "How many samples did we get from Elysium Prime?" he asked his assistant, Amy Carter, who ran beside him with a digital tablet. "Only 30% of their genetic library," she replied, breathing hard. "The Council forces didn't understand we were trying to help. They thought we were stealing." Robert placed the container in a special vault, where thousands of others like it were already stored. Each one held a piece of the beauty that humanity was destroying. The irony wasn't lost on him. They were working harder to save alien culture than the Council had worked to understand human culture. "Update from the front lines," a voice announced over the station's speakers. "The World Breaker has begun targeting the Centauri Paradise Cluster. All preservation teams have 6 hours to complete their missions." Robert watched as more teams rushed past, carrying artwork, data crystals, and specimens. Some Council members who understood what was happening had secretly helped them, sneaking out cultural treasures before the human war machines arrived. "Professor," Amy called out, pointing to her screen. "The singing forests of Luminara, they're next on the target list. We haven't saved their song patterns yet." Robert ran to the communications center, where rows of humans worked to record and store everything they could. He found the station's commander, Linda Wright, coordinating the preservation efforts. "We need more time on Luminara," he said. "Their songs, they're not just music, they're the history of 3 civilizations. If we lose them, we lose thousands of years of stories." Linda looked at the tactical display, where red dots showed human forces advancing across Council space. "I can ask them to delay the attack by 2 hours. But that's all we can risk. The Council's main fleet is regrouping." Robert nodded and gathered his team. They had gotten good at this over the past week, rushing to dying worlds, saving what they could, running away before the destruction began. It wasn't how he had imagined his career as a xenoanthropologist would go. "The Council calls us barbarians," he told his team as they boarded their transport ship. "But real barbarians don't try to preserve what they destroy. Real barbarians don't weep for the beauty they have to kill." Their ship launched from Haven, racing toward Luminara. Through the viewport, Robert could see the effects of the World Breaker in the distance, stars flickering as human weapons bent space itself. The Council had thought their paradise worlds would last forever. They had never understood that nothing lasts forever. "Professor," Amy said softly, looking at sensor readings, "I'm picking up Council ships near Luminara. But they're helping evacuate the forests. They're cutting out whole sections and loading them onto ships." Robert smiled sadly. "They're learning. Too late, but they're learning. Humanity doesn't want to destroy everything. We just want to survive." Their ship landed in a clearing surrounded by crystal trees that hummed with ancient songs. The team worked quickly, recording the melodies, taking samples, saving what they could. Above them, Council ships carried away pieces of the forest, while human warships waited patiently, giving them time. "This isn't how anyone wanted things to be," Robert said as they finished their work. "But sometimes survival means doing terrible things. The difference is whether you take responsibility for what you destroy." As they lifted off, Robert watched the first human weapons strike the surface. The songs of the forests changed from stories to screams, then to silence. In his ship's cargo hold, samples of the trees still hummed quietly, keeping their ancient tales alive. "When this is over," he promised the samples, "we'll help rebuild. Not the same as before. Nothing can be the same after this. But something new, something that remembers both the paradise that was lost and the reason it had to be lost." The ship jumped to light speed, racing back to Haven with its precious cargo. Behind them, another paradise world turned to dust, its death preserved in the memories of those who had tried to save it. Admiral Susan Martinez stood on the bridge of the ESS Retribution, watching the stars die. Not natural death. These stars were being killed. The World Breaker's energy spread through space like dark lightning, turning perfect suns into weapons against their own worlds. Target locked on Paradise System 447, reported Officer David Clark from his station. Council Defense Fleet is attempting to block the energy surge. Susan almost felt sorry for them. They still thought they could fight this with ships and shields. They didn't understand that humanity had learned to break the rules of space itself. "Begin the sequence," she ordered. The bridge crew worked silently, their faces lit by the glow of dying stars. Each person knew what they were doing, turning gardens into graves. But they also remembered why. The World Breaker's energy shot out from their ship, a beam of darkness that seemed to swallow light itself. It struck the star of Paradise System 447, and for a moment nothing happened. Then the star began to pulse with strange colors. "Council ships are retreating," David reported. "They've learned what comes next." Susan nodded. After watching 15 Paradise worlds die, even the proudest council races had learned to run. The star's pulses grew stronger, each one sending waves of energy that stripped away the Paradise world's atmosphere. "How many civilian ships got away?" she asked. 98% of the population was evacuated," answered Lieutenant Kelly Foster. "The council is getting better at running." That was good. Humanity didn't want to kill the council races, just show them why starting a war with Earth had been their biggest mistake. The star flared one last time, and the Paradise world cracked like an egg, its pieces drifting apart in the void. "Message from Council High Command," David said. They're begging now." Susan walked to the main screen, where the faces of the council leaders appeared. Their elegant features were twisted with fear and desperation. These were the same beings who had voted to destroy Earth, who had called humans too dangerous to exist. "Please," the High Commander said, "you've made your point. We understand now. We were wrong about humanity. Just stop killing the stars." "You don't understand yet," Susan replied. "You thought we built the World Breaker to win a war. We built it to make sure that if anyone tried to kill us, they would lose everything they valued. You forced us to use it. Every Paradise world that dies is because of your choice." She turned to her crew. "Next target." The council leaders watched in horror as another beam of darkness shot toward another star. Their perfect worlds were dying, one by one. The gardens they had spent thousands of years building were turning to cosmic dust. "Admiral," Kelly reported, "we're receiving transmissions from several council member races. They're withdrawing from the council. They say they won't support the war against Earth anymore." Susan allowed herself a small smile. That was the real purpose of all this destruction, not just to punish the council, but to break it apart. Humanity had learned from its own history that empires fall when their members lose faith in their leaders. "Show me the next target," she ordered. The screen displayed a beautiful blue world, much like Earth had once been. Circular cities floated in its sky, connected by bridges of light. Gardens covered its surface, full of wonders that had evolved over millions of years. "Begin evacuation warning," Susan said. "Give them 1 hour." As she watched council ships rush to save what they could, Susan thought about Earth, about all the times in human history when civilizations had fallen. The council had built 1,000 Paradise worlds, thinking they would last forever. Humanity had built the World Breaker knowing that nothing lasts forever. The next beam of darkness shot out from her ship, carrying humanity's message to the stars. "Never threaten a species that has spent its entire history preparing for the worst." Captain Brian Foster walked through the crystal gardens of Celestia, his boots leaving marks on paths that had never known human feet before. His Marine squad followed behind him, their dark armor a stark contrast to the rainbow flowers and glowing trees around them. This was the last Paradise world, the most beautiful of all the Council's creations. "Area secure, sir," said Sergeant Mary Wilson, her rifle held ready. Council leaders are waiting in the Crystal Palace ahead. Above them, the sky was filled with human warships. The World Breaker hung in orbit like a dark star, its threat clear to everyone. 50 Paradise worlds had already died. This one would be next unless the Council surrendered completely. Remember, Brian told his squad, we're here to accept their surrender, not to fight. But stay alert. Desperate people do desperate things. They reached the Crystal Palace, a building that seemed to be made of frozen light. Inside, the remaining council leaders waited. Once, they had ruled thousands of worlds. Now they controlled only this last paradise, and even that hung by a thread. You have broken us, the High Commander said as Brian entered. The alien leader looked older now, worn down by watching his empire crumble. Was that not enough? Must you take our last garden too? Brian looked around the room. Art from 100 dead worlds decorated the walls. Each piece was probably worth more than everything on Earth. But Earth was still there, still free, and that was what mattered. This isn't about breaking you, Brian said. It's about making sure you understand something. Humanity would rather burn the galaxy than be enslaved or destroyed. You tried to kill us because you thought we were too dangerous. You proved yourselves right. One of the council members stepped forward, his elegant robes dusty from evacuation. We have seen what your world breaker can do. You can destroy stars themselves. Why did you build such a terrible weapon? Because we remembered our history, Brian answered. Every time someone with better weapons met someone with worse weapons on Earth, the weaker side usually died. So we made sure that if anyone tried to kill us, they would lose everything. He pulled out a data pad and placed it on the crystal table. These are our terms. Sign them, and celestial lives. Refuse, and it dies. It's that simple. The council leaders looked at the terms. They weren't actually harsh. Humanity didn't want their worlds or their technology. They just wanted guarantees that the council would never threaten Earth again. You could take everything from us now, another council member said. Your weapons are unstoppable. Why show mercy? Brian thought about the preservation teams, about how humans had worked to save what they could even while destroying worlds. Because we're not the monsters you thought we were. We're just survivors who learned from history. The High Commander picked up the data pad with shaking hands. And if we sign this, what happens to the paradise worlds we have lost? We'll help rebuild them, Brian said. Different than before, but perhaps better. Worlds where humans and council races can live together. Where no one forgets the price of war. One by one, the council leaders signed. As they did, Brian sent the signal to the fleet above. The world breaker's dark energy faded, and for the first time in weeks, no stars died. Let this be remembered, the High Commander said as he signed last. Not just as the day the council fell, but as the day we learned that paradise means nothing if you're not strong enough to protect it. Brian looked out through the crystal walls at the perfect gardens beyond. His squad stood ready, watching the council leaders, but he knew there would be no more fighting. The war was over. Humanity had won not just survival, but respect. Sometimes, he said quietly, the best way to prevent a war is to show what war really costs. Remember this garden, and remember why it's the last one standing. 20 years after the Council War, Dr. Amanda Hayes stood on the newly rebuilt surface of New Eden, watching alien and human children play together in the restored gardens. The world looked different now. Not the pure paradise it had once been, but something more real, more honest. The new forests are growing well, said Zar-El, her council partner in the restoration project. Once, he had been a high-ranking garden designer. Now he worked alongside humans, building worlds that were strong as well as beautiful. They're tougher than the old ones, Amanda replied, touching the bark of a tree that could survive both radiation and cold. Like us, less perfect, but harder to kill. Above them, the world breaker still hung in orbit around Earth, now surrounded by observation stations from every spacefaring race. Nobody was allowed to build anything like it ever again, but nobody was allowed to forget it existed either. The children don't remember the war, Zar-El said, watching the young ones play. Human kids with their quick movements, council children with their graceful steps, all playing together in gardens designed to survive any disaster. That's good, Amanda answered. But their parents remember. Their teachers remember. The ruins remember. They walked through the garden to the memorial wall, where pieces of all 50 destroyed paradise worlds were displayed. Each fragment glowed with its own light, beautiful even in death. Below them, dates marked when each world had died. Latest report from the restoration teams, Amanda said, checking her datapad. 30 worlds rebuilt so far, different than before, but alive again. The rest will take another decade, maybe two. A group of council scientists passed by, nodding respectfully to Amanda. After the war, many had asked to work with humans, wanting to learn how Earth had survived so many near disasters in its history. They had built perfect worlds, but had never learned how to protect them. Some still call us monsters, Amanda said quietly, for building the world breaker, for using it. And some call us fools, Zar-El replied, for threatening a species that had spent its whole history preparing for the worst. Perhaps we are both right. Perhaps that is why we work together now. They reached the education center, where young scientists from both human and council worlds studied together. On the walls, pictures showed the war's destruction next to images of rebuilding. Every student learned both how paradise had died and how it was being reborn. Message from Earth Command, Amanda's comm unit announced. The last Paradise Restoration Project has been approved. Funding from both Earth and Council worlds confirmed. She smiled at the news. The last Paradise world to be rebuilt would be Elysium Prime, where Lieutenant Cooper's forces had first shown the Council what human warfare really meant. Now it would show them what human reconstruction could do. We're building them differently this time, she told Zar-El. Not just gardens to look pretty, but worlds that can survive. Worlds that remember what happened. A transport ship landed nearby, bringing more supplies for the restoration. Human engineers worked alongside Council architects, combining Earth's survival skills with alien beauty. The new worlds they built were stronger than the old Paradise worlds, ready for whatever the galaxy might bring. The Council thought Paradise had to be perfect, Amanda said, watching the work. We taught them that Paradise has to be tough enough to survive. That's worth all the worlds we had to break. As the sun set, Amanda looked up at the stars. The world breaker's dark energy had changed them, left marks that would last for centuries. But between those marks, new gardens were growing. Not perfect, not pure, but real. And this time, built to last. We broke their paradise to save ourselves, she said to the evening sky. But we stayed to build it back stronger. That's the real victory. Not that we survived, but that we helped them survive too. The lights of the new city came on, neither purely human nor purely council and design, but something new, something that had learned from both destruction and rebirth. The price of peace had been high, but the peace itself, built on understanding rather than fear, would last far longer than any paradise.